You can understand the pattern and still repeat it. Not because you're weak, not because there is something wrong with you, not because the insight was fake, but because the part of you that knows better is not always the same part of you that feels safe enough to choose differently in real time. And I think this is one of the most painful, exhausting places to find yourself in personal growth. Because when you don't know any better, there is at least some innocence in it. You can look back and say, I didn't see it. I didn't understand what I was doing. But once you see the pattern clearly, once you have the breakthrough, and then you still find yourself doing the exact same thing again, that is where shame quietly enters the room. You find yourself saying yes when your soul desperately wanted to pause. You stay months or years too long in a situation or a relationship that does not feel right. You let a boundary be crossed over and over again, even though your entire system already knew it was happening. You keep pushing yourself when you are completely drained, trying to solve your exhaustion with pure discipline. You keep explaining yourself, proving your worth, trying to control the outcome, and waiting for someone else to finally change. And somewhere deep inside, you hear yourself repeating that heavy, familiar question. I know this already. Why am I doing it again? And that sentence feels like a mountain because it isn't just frustration, it's deep disappointment in yourself. It's the feeling that you should be much further along by now. That if you really understood the lesson, you wouldn't be standing right here again. But what if being here again does not mean you failed? What if it simply means there is another layer of the path asking to be met? What if the pattern appeared today not to punish you, but to show you exactly where the old story still holds power? You know, knowing something intellectually is only the first step. Living it when your body feels an undercurrent of unsafety is an entirely different world. You know, we read books, we listen to the podcasts, we go to coaching sessions, and we understand our childhood dynamics. We can talk expertly about people pleasing, boundaries, and self trust. And then real life happens. Someone pulls away, someone is visibly disappointed in us. A sudden piece of pressure arrives at work or at home. There is silence, conflict, or fear. And suddenly the old pattern is no longer a neat theory. It is alive inside your body. And the body often reacts 10 times faster than our wisdom. This is why a person can know she or he needs to rest and still keep pushing. She or he can know she or he needs a boundary and still say yes. She or he can know something is not right for her or his or for her or him and still stay. And she or he can know she or he should trust herself and still ask 5 other people what they think. She or he can know she or he is allowed to choose differently and still feel frozen. The new choice might be healthier, but it is also completely unknown. And the mind automatically reads the unknown as unsafe, even when the old pattern is incredibly painful. It is familiar, and your system will choose a familiar pain over an unfamiliar freedom almost every single time. And the relationship that drains you feels safer than being alone, maybe. Overworking feels safer than resting. Saying yes feels safer than dealing with someone else's disappointment. Control feels safer than trust. Staying quiet feels safer than speaking an uncomfortable truth. And not because those choices are good for you, but because your nervous system has practiced them for decades. It knows how to survive them. So when you try to choose differently, a quiet panic sets in. And that panic doesn't always sound like screaming. Usually it sounds incredibly logical. It tells you, now, now is just not the right time. Maybe I'm overreacting. It's really not that bad. I just need to push through this 1 week and then I'll take space. And before you can catch it, you are right back inside the old movie. The movie where you have to carry everything alone, where your needs are a burden, where love means tolerating what hurts, where rest has to be earned, and where your body just has to wait. And the tricky part is that in the moment, the movie feels real. It feels like truth, but it is just an old story running again. And I remember this very clearly in my own life. There were distinct moments where I knew with absolute certainty that something was not right for me, and still I stayed too long. I knew I needed to pause, and still I said yes. I felt a deep, heavy exhaustion that sleep could no longer fix, and yet I kept driving forward. And I watched boundaries get crossed in a relationship, and I didn't find the strength or the way to set them right at the very beginning. And I had those exact moments where I was literally talking to myself in the car, in the shower, or lying awake at night asking, why am I loving this? Why am I still doing this when I know it is actively hurting me? And I think many women know that quiet conversation with themselves, the one that happens in the car, in the shower, in bed at night, on a walk, when everything is finally quiet enough to hear the truth. You know, something in you knows. But knowing does not always mean you have built the strength, the safety, and the self trust to act immediately. If you know that quiet, painful conversation, please hear me. Knowing does not mean you have automatically built the emotional muscle to act immediately. That is not an excuse, it is accurate understanding. And once you understand that, you can stop beating yourself up and actually work with the pattern efficiently. Real change doesn't usually happen through an overnight explosion or one dramatic, flawless leap. It happens in tiny, almost invisible layers. It looks like taking just 5 minutes for yourself when you would normally keep running. It looks like saying, I need to think about that, instead of agreeing instantly. It looks like saying no to one small demand, leaving the room for a moment, or allowing someone else to feel disappointed without rushing in to fix it. Every small different choice tells your system, we survived that. We choose ourselves, and then the world did not end. That is how self trust is built, not by a grand declaration, but by keeping micro promises to your own soul. For me, one of the patterns was control. I saw it, I understood it. I knew control was not really giving me safety, but it still took time to loosen it because control had been my way of feeling safe. If I could think enough, plan enough, anticipate enough, prepare enough, manage enough, maybe nothing would surprise me. Maybe nothing would hurt me. Maybe I could avoid the next fall. Of course, it does not work like that. Control can give the illusion of safety, but it often steals peace. It makes the mind louder, the body tighter, the breath shorter, and life smaller. But even after seeing that, I still had to practice letting go. Not once, many times, in small moments, because we often imagine change as a dramatic decision. And sometimes it is, but most of the time, real change begins much, much smaller. Like taking 5 minutes for yourself when you would normally keep pushing. Saying, I need to think about it instead of saying yes immediately. And not replying from panic, not explaining yourself for the 10th time, not abandoning your body because the task feels urgent, saying no to something small, leaving the room for a moment, letting someone be disappointed, choosing not to chase, choosing not to fix, choosing not to repeat the same emotional contract. And these small moments may look almost invisible from the outside, but inside they're huge because every small different choice tells your system, we can survive this. We can choose ourselves and still be safe. We can pause and not lose everything. We can disappoint someone and still be worthy. We can rest and not disappear. We can listen to the body and not fall apart. And that is how self-trust is built. Not by one big declaration, but by keeping small promises to yourself. And the ultimate anchor for those promises isn't your intellect, it's your psychology. And that is how self-trust is built, not by one big declaration, but by keeping small promises to yourself. And the ultimate anchor for those promises isn't your intellect, it's your physiology. Because over time, something changes. Maybe the old pattern still appears, but you can notice it sooner. You feel it sooner. You catch the movie before it becomes the whole day. You realize this is the old story. You pause before you agree. You feel the tightness in your stomach before you force yourself forward. You notice your posture, your jaw, your breath, your chest. You feel your body saying, something is not right here. And maybe before you ignored that, maybe before you pushed it away, maybe before you need the situation to become unbearable before you allowed yourself to act. But now, you listened earlier. That is progress. Not that the pattern never comes, but that you do not lose yourself inside it for as long. And the body is always our very first signal. Long before the mind admits what is happening, long before we have the words to explain it, the body knows the truth. It shows up as a sudden stiffness in your stomach, a tight chest, a shallow breath, or a collapsed posture. It's a physical feeling of shrinking or a heavy, unnatural forcing. And we often ask our minds to solve what the body has already answered. We sit there overthinking, playing horror movies in our heads and asking, should I stay? Is this right? Maybe I'm just exaggerating. And meanwhile, our stomach is literally sitting there like a hard stone saying, no, pause, this is too much. And I'm not saying every body sensation means a big dramatic decision has to be made, but it is information. It is a signal. It is worth listening to. And this is why one of the most important practices is not reacting immediately. Just pause before you answer, before you agree, before you explain, before you stay, before you push, before you say, it's fine when it's not fine. So here is the practical shift I want you to make this week. Before you make a decision, before you answer the text, before you agree to the task, before you force yourself forward, pause and read your body. If you notice that familiar stiffness or tension, take a single deep breath and run an internal audit. Ask yourself, what old story is running right now? What movie am I playing? Am I responding to what is actually happening or to what I am afraid will happen? Is this my truth or is this my fear trying to keep me safe? And what is my body telling me? And then choose one small different response. Not the perfect response, not the most enlightened response, just one response that is slightly more aligned than the old one. That is enough. Because change does not usually happen as one big leap into a completely new life. It happens through tiny moments where you stop betraying yourself in the way you used to. And when you do that, even once you feel it, there is a different feeling, not always easy. Sometimes choosing differently feels uncomfortable. Sometimes it brings fear. Sometimes your mind still argues. But underneath that, there is often peace, a quiet sense of this is right. I am with myself. I did not abandon myself this time. And that feeling is very different from the temporary relief of pleasing someone or avoiding conflict. People pleasing gives quick relief. Self trust gives deeper peace. Control gives quick relief. Surrender gives deeper peace. Staying in the familiar gives quick relief. Choosing what is true gives deeper peace. And after I started choosing differently, that is what I began, when I began to feel more and more peace, wholeness, alignment, and this feeling of being right inside me. Not because everything outside was perfect, but because I was not living myself in the same way. Because when you keep repeating a pattern, the worst part is often not even the situation itself. It is the self abandonment inside it. It is knowing something is not right and still acting against yourself. It is feeling drained and still pretending you are fine. It's wanting to pause and still saying yes. It is feeling your body close and still walking forward. And though and then we wonder why we lose trust in ourselves. But self-trust cannot grow in a life where you keep ignoring yourself. It grows when you begin to listen, even in small ways, especially in small ways. So if you are in a place where you are thinking, I know this already, why am I here again? I want you to be very careful with how you speak to yourself, because this is the moment where you can either deepen the shame or deepen the learning. You can say, I'm hopeless, I never change, I am back at the beginning. I should be further along. Or you can say, okay, this pattern is here again. What is it showing me? What can I meet with more compassion this time? What do I need to see? What is the next step? You know, if a friend came to you and said, I repeated something I thought I had already learned, would you judge her or him? Would you tell her or him that she or he is stupid? Would you tell her or him it's not he's not okay or she's not okay? Would you tell her or him she or he should be ashamed? Probably not. You would probably listen. You would probably remind her or him that he or she is a human. You would help. And you would encourage her or him to take the next step. So why do we not do that with ourselves? Why do we think shame will get us further than love? It won't. Shame makes the pattern heavier. Compassion creates space. And in that space, wisdom becomes easier to hear. And that does not mean we excuse everything. It does not mean we say, it's fine, I can just repeat this forever. No. Love is not avoidance. Self-compassion is not passivity. Real compassion tells the truth without violence. It says, yes, this pattern appeared again. And yes, I'm still worthy. And yes, I am responsible for choosing the next step. And that is much stronger place to stand. Because when you meet yourself with patience, You are not giving yourself permission to stay stuck. You are giving yourself the safety to move. And safety matters because many old patterns were built around survival. Maybe saying yes kept you loved. Maybe saying quiet kept you safe. Maybe overworking kept you respected. Maybe control helped you feel less helpless. Maybe staying too long helped you avoid the fear of being alone. And maybe ignoring your body helped you kept functioning when stopping did not feel possible. So when you change the pattern, you are not only changing a habit, you are changing an old protection. And old protection does not disappear just because you understand it. It softens when you show your system that there is another way, again and again and again. And that is why the small steps matter. Taking 5 minutes to yourself matter. Saying one small no matters. Pausing before answering matters. Leaving one thing unfinished matters. Resting before collapse matters. Naming what you feel matters. Not staying one more hour in a conversation that drains you matters. And trusting the first quiet no in your body matters. Because every time you choose differently, you are teaching yourself, I can be with myself. I can protect my peace. I can listen to my body. I can trust what I know. I can survive discomfort. I can choose truth over the familiar. And the new choice feels uncomfortable, not because it is wrong, but because it is new. Peace can feel unfamiliar. Boundaries can feel rude at first. Rest can feel lazy. Self-trust can feel risky at first. Living can feel dangerous at first. And pausing can feel selfish at first. But unfamiliar is not the same as unsafe. Sometimes it is just unpracticed. And that is where the work is. Not to wait until the new choice feels completely comfortable, but to choose it in a small enough way that your system can learn it. One small step at a time. And this is how the path is built. Not by never failing, not by never repeating, not by never getting triggered, but by returning with more awareness each time. And eventually you begin to see. I used to stay in this loop for months. Now I see it in weeks. I used to lose myself for weeks. Now I notice in days. I used to ignore my body until I collapsed. Now I hear it sooner. I used to say yes automatically. Now I can pause. I used to need the pain to become that pain become unbearable. Now I trust the first signal. And that is not small. That is the transformation, quiet transformation, the kind nobody always sees. The kind that does not look dramatic on the outside, but changes your whole inner world. Because one day you realize you are no longer choosing from the fear in the same way. You're no longer negotiating with your own truth for so long. You're no longer waiting for permission to listen to yourself. And that is where self-trust becomes real. Not as a concept, but as a lived experience. So, where do you keep repeating a pattern you already understand? Where do you know the truth but not yet choose it? Where does your body tell you something before your mind is ready to admit it? Where are you saying yes when you need to pause? Where are you staying too long? Where are you pushing through when you need to rest? When are you calling the unknown unsafe only because it is unfamiliar? And what is one small different response you can practice today? Not the whole life, not the perfect version of you, just one response. One pause, one breath, one no, one moment of listening to the body, one choice not to abandon yourself. Because that is how change happens, layer by layer, step by step, with patience, with love, with awareness, with the courage to meet yourself again, even when the pattern appears again. And you're not failing because life triggered you. You're not failing because the old story came back. You're not failing because change is not linear. You're walking the path. And sometimes on a path you fall, sometimes you circle back, sometimes you need to learn the same lesson from different angle. Sometimes the same pattern returns because this time you are ready to meet it differently. So, meet yourself gently. Ask what pattern is showing you, and what old movies are you playing. Ask what your body knows, and then take the next step. Because at the end, it is not about never repeating the pattern again. It is not about recognizing it sooner, living it faster, learning from it deeper, and choosing yourself more firmly each time. One step, then another, then another. That is how we come home. And if you found that the fear of external evaluation, the absolute terror of being judged by others as lazy, selfish, or a failure, is the hidden story keeping you locked inside these repetitive patterns, I want to invite you to click the link in the first comment below this episode. I created a highly practical $7 course on releasing the fear of judgments and shame. It is designed specifically to help you understand how deeply the fear of outside opinions drives your nervous system behavior, so you can stop abandoning your own truth just to maintain comfort. The link is right there in the first comment. Welcome home.